schools. And my area of responsibility is communication disorders, which is speech pathology, occupational and physical therapy, assistive technology, audiology, and, is that right? Deaf and hard of hearing. This is my colleague Sheila. I'm going to let her introduce herself in a moment. But we were asked yesterday to sit on the panel. We were very excited to do so, not just because we looked at it as an opportunity to be out of the office for 2 hours. That excited us very much. But the other reason that we were very excited to do this is because both of us have a very long-standing relationship and passion for students with autism. I have been in public education, in the field exclusively of special education. This is my 35th year. And I spent a lion's share of that on a preschool infant diagnostic team in California for 20 years. And so I have seen over the course of my career what our first speaker talked about, which is the increasing numbers of students on the autism spectrum that are coming into the schools. And while, yes, we have gotten much better at the diagnosis, there also are many more students in the public schools with an autism diagnosis. And so I was very fortunate to be involved with that at the grassroots level many years ago in California, and then have now been in Georgia for 15 years with Fulton County.
Hi, I'm Sheila Connell. I'm a coordinator for special education, but focuses on the instructional side. So what I do is work with schools to ensure that all teachers, all administrators, all staff, right down to the bus drivers and the cafeteria workers, understand, have awareness about autism, and understand how to work with children with autism. I think that we sat at the end of this panel for a reason, because there's sort of a continuum of excellent early intervention efforts going on. But as Nancy said, there are many, many students in our school systems that do not yet have autism spectrum disorder medical diagnosis that we work with under the eligibility of autism. That's pretty much my area. I do also want to say that in the schools, we, as one speaker talked about, really focus on capitalizing on students' strengths and working on their weaknesses. I thought that was an excellent way of putting what our efforts really do. I also am the parent of a child with an autistic spectrum disorder. Back in 1997, January 9th to be exact, I had to push and push. I experienced a lot of the frustrations that some of our panelists talked about, where I knew something was wrong. My child was kicked out of preschools left and right, and my pediatrician wasn't really focusing on anything as wrong, and basically was not pursuing the issue, so I had to pursue it myself through the state, through the Department of Human Resources, and I finally ended up with Babies Can't Wait, and my child is now 19 and a public school student for his whole life, starting with preschool. So I personally have experience with that process as well. So we want to talk to you a little bit about what we do in the school system, and a little bit more about Fulton County Schools.
Well, Fulton County Schools is the county in which Atlanta is situated, but Atlanta has their own school system, the Atlanta Public Schools. So we are everything north and south, basically outside the perimeter. We're the 4th largest school district in the state. We're breathing down the neck of DeKalb County for the honor of being 3rd largest. We have between 95,000 and 96,000 students at 100 different schools. Of those students, our most recent reporting to the state is that 907 students, or approximately a little less than 1% of those students, have an eligibility for special education services under the eligibility category of autism. Now, our first speaker talked a lot about the DSM diagnostic criteria. Schools eligibility is very similar for the autism eligibility, but there are some differences. In fact, the DSM-5 seems to have come a little more our direction, because ours is a little more of a broad description of autism spectrum than the DSM-4 was. So we're more in line with the DSM-5 than we were with the DSM-4. We're not going to spend time talking about that now. If you have interest in eligibility and lots of the nuances of eligibility and services, I encourage you to go to the Georgia Department of Ed website and Google Special Education Implementation Manual in the search engine. It will pull up a manual that has two parts. The first part talks about the first part talks about different strategies and philosophies as it relates to all 12 categories of eligibility for special education services. And the second one talks about different services that are available and what they might look like in the public schools. It's an excellent resource. There are lots and lots of links to other resources related to special education services right on that, in that implementation manual. But yes?
Could you just repeat where that manual is located again?
It's, if you go to, is it www. Just
GADOE, just Google the Georgia Department of Education.
Just Google Georgia Department of Education. That's what I did.
And then look for what?
Then in the search engine put Special Education Implementation Manual. So we serve almost 100,000 students in the district in 100 schools, ages 3 through 22. Students are eligible for services through public schools at the age of 3 and until their 22nd birthday. As we discussed, 907 students are currently reported with autism eligibility in special education, but that's very misleading because as we talked earlier, or as the speaker spoke about earlier, autism eligibility is often not the first eligibility that students are given, even educationally. Many times the students will first be diagnosed as having a communication disorder, or most frequently they will have a more general eligibility category of significant developmental delay. Even though a medical diagnosis is certainly appreciated when a student comes to the school system, it is not required for a student to receive services in the autism category for special education in public schools. The other part of that that I want to make sure that I talk about a little bit is that there are many students on the spectrum who do not receive special education services, because one of the most important prongs in eligibility for services in the public schools is that the disorder must be disabling. In other words, it must have an educational impact. And so there are many students on the spectrum that are doing quite well in school and don't receive special education services because they don't need them. And we're going to talk a little bit about the continuum of services as well. The last point I want to make is, Sheila's having to talk about those services, is that all service decisions, once eligibility has been established, are data-driven. They are not fixed in time or place. It is a continuum of services that students move in and out of, depending upon their progress on their individual objectives.
So once a student meets eligibility requirements for special education, an individual education program, or better known as an IEP, is drawn up by the IEP committee, which includes a number of different school personnel as well as certainly parents as a very integral part of that process. The first, in terms of the continuum of services in any school system under IDEA, there are a variety of them, and it's driven by the student's individual need based on the IEP. The first point here on our slide is 504 plan, and there are asterisks after that because it is not a special education program. This is a program that is a general education program designed to help any student with a disability, provides equal access to the curriculum. So a student who may not need specially designed instruction through special education, but may need some accommodations and other supports, will be able to get those through a general education 504 plan, okay? So that's the first rung of our continuum. The second rung would be, and going from the most support to more support from the top to the bottom, would be general education with supportive instruction. And that might be a student in a general education classroom not a teen talk classroom, but a classroom that has a general education teacher, might have another staff member who's not a certified teacher providing additional support. Most commonly, that would be a paraprofessional, an instructional paraprofessional, who might be working with a number of students in the classroom who have IEPs, okay? The second rung here is general education with consultative services. And that would include a certified, highly qualified special education teacher who might be working with the student and or the teaching staff to provide consultative services and strategies on how to work with the student in the classroom, in hallways, in transitions, in the cafeteria, wherever that child needs support. The next more supportive model that we have is general education with collaborative instruction. And that, again, would still be an inclusive setting in a general education classroom, but a special education teacher is going to be providing specially designed instruction for all or part of whatever segment of the day that the student needs the support in that general education classroom. And then the next rung would be a special education setting, which sometimes we call interrelated resource, for part or most of the day. And an IEP can really choose a number of these types of settings. It doesn't have to be one. It can be all of them for whatever the student needs. And then the last thing would be, what are those related services that Nancy mentioned that she's responsible for? Physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech. Well, speech is not a related service in Georgia, but it's a special education service. But some of those other areas that would help to support the students' needs in the classroom or in whatever setting that they are in.
Okay, we wanted to share with you a couple of the initiatives. Since today's panel is all about partnership, we wanted to talk with you a little bit about some of the partnerships that we currently have in place in Fulton County. And the first one has to do with staff training. It may surprise you to know that there is no teacher certification to work with students with autism. You cannot become a teacher of students with autism. And so we work with student-teacher placements for students who are interested in autism. Actually, we start working with students before that. A number of our high schools have programs where the students are learning about different career paths, and one of those career paths is education. And as part of that career path, they do an internship in the schools. And so we are placing those high school students with an interest in teaching in some classrooms with students with autism so that they can become interested and engaged with those students. We also work with the student-teacher placements, and we're starting to see the universities request on behalf of their students that we place some of their student teachers in classrooms with students with autism. I manage the internships for the speech pathologists. The speech pathologist, as part of their training program, has to do a 4-month school's internship. And not too long ago, I don't think I had anyone request placement at a school where the intern could work with autism. And now, every semester, I have at least 2 or more speech pathologists, future speech pathologists, who are saying, I want to specialize in autism. Can you give me that experience? And we work very hard to give them the best possible internship experience we can. We also do a lot of our own internal training. Staff development dollars are very scarce for the public schools, and we're very fortunate that we have an internal staff development cycle and catalog that is focused on helping teachers learn more about autism and working with students with autism in their classrooms. We also have a series on using assistive technology with students, and including students on the autism spectrum. And in the speech therapy department, we have a series of staff development trainings that we do, social skills training and augmentative communication and picture exchange communication. So we do a lot of our own internal training. It's kind of a trainer of trainers model. We also partner with lots of state agencies and most of us sit on lots of state agencies that help to shape and design policy and practices in the public schools. From my end, we have several organizations that are dedicated to providing speech therapy in the schools. It's called GO-SSLP. It's a Georgia organization of school-based speech-language pathologists. And we do 2 conferences a year, and we always make sure that we have national speakers on the communication needs of students with autism as presenters, and they are our most attended sessions. We always have to have a double conference room for that speaker. We also have staff members who are on the steering committees for the Georgian Organization of School-Based Occupational and Physical Therapists. And tomorrow we are hosting the GATE Conference, which is the Georgia Assistive Technology and Education Conference, that will focus a lot on technology and its use for both verbal and nonverbal students. Some of the other partnerships, we partner very closely with Babies Can't Wait to make sure that those babies are ready to start school on their 3rd birthday. And that starts long before their 3rd birthday, the communication and the collaboration with the agency. And then second to last, we're very proud of some of the corporate partnerships that we have on the other end of the continuum. As our students matriculate out and graduate from school, we work a lot with adult rehab, getting them set up. We help them navigate the Medicaid system, which is very complex, as some of you well know. But we also have some job training programs. It's called LIFE, and we have established corporate partnerships with Siemens, the state capital, Ritz, Verizon, Kimberly-Clark, and students with special needs, including students with autism, do on-the-job training. They go out and their classroom is that facility, and they learn those skills, and for some of those students it turns into employment after graduation. One of our most successful in our first program was North Fulton Hospital, called Project Search. And lastly, we collaborate with parents. We have parent mentors who will help the families in our district navigate the system, answer questions, and provide support. I'm glad to take any of your questions as well.
And I also would like to add too that we, at the school level, many of our teachers and our school psychologists do partner with private practitioners, Marcus Center, some of the private psychologists who are working with our students, whether it be having them in for an observation. Of course, we work on the educational side versus the medical side, but we collaborate to kind of come together very frequently. So, under school policy of observations and things like that, we work together to make sure that we're looking at the whole child. Thank you very much.